and welcome to the Leopard Spots podcast, presented by Fractional, a leading provider of risk and compliance services to fintechs, banks, and crypto firms. Join the founders, owners, investors, and senior executives as they dive deep into the world of business and entrepreneurship. Trust me, these guys have seen it all, and they're here to share their wisdom with you. So, let's get going. Please welcome your host, Ryan Simo.
Welcome back to the Leopard Spots podcast. I am your host, Ryan Simo, and I am very pleased today to be joined by former NFL great Mike Hollis. And I have to point out real quick, because we were just talking about it offline, the Buffalo Bills helmet has now been strategically placed, and it replaced a Chargers helmet. So for all our Buffalo listeners, thank Mike for repping the Bills, and we'll get into that part of his career. But Mike, it's great to have you with us. And before we get started, this podcast is brought to you by Fractional.co. We are a leading provider of risk and compliance services to banks and fintechs, crypto firms, and private equity firms. So certainly check us out at Fractional. That's with an X.co. So we're joined today by somebody who I met, I think it was 29 years ago, Mike, when I had met you. We were counselors at a kicking camp in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. You were already into your NFL career. I was at Lafayette College, a Division I AA school, punting, and I was invited to come do that. And I thought you would appreciate this. I didn't share this with you offline yet, but my parents saved everything. This T-shirt, how it's still alive, I have no idea. But I wore this under for every game in college. I wore this underneath, and there are holes. I was going to wear it today, but I figured it would turn to dust if I tried. So there you go. I figured you'd get a kick out of that. But Mike was a 9-year NFL veteran, spent time briefly with the Chargers, but a bulk of his career with the Jacksonville Jaguars, a stopover in Buffalo with the Bills, and then also with the New York Giants before he had retired. You know, it's fascinating, Mike. I was going back and looking, and I remember obviously at the time that you were playing, but 1997, you led the NFL in points scored. And you were, at the time, the most accurate kicker in NFL history as those things go. And then you were named to the Pro Bowl in 1998. So a really awesome career, 9-year career, which I'd love to get into. And then you've transitioned, obviously. You're the owner-operator of Proform Kicking Academy, where you work with athletes around punting and kicking, which I could have probably used a bit of. And then you're also an entrepreneur involved in it's called 3 Proactive Wellness, which your shirt has on there today. And so I'd love to hear about all of it. So welcome to the show. There's the big intro.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on, and glad to share all my experiences, everything you need to know about me. I'm an open book.
Excellent. Very good. And we were also saying offline, my previous guest was Brian Moorman. And I have to ask, he was a punter of the Bills. Was he your holder for that 1 year, or did you miss him by a year?
Yeah, no, he was there. One of the reasons they actually brought me in was to kind of mentor him. That was his second year in Buffalo, the year I went there. And then that year, he was actually an alternate to the Pro Bowl as a punter. And then the next year after that, which was the year I was with the Giants, he actually went to the Pro Bowl that year. So, and then he went another time after that as well. So a great guy, great punter, great athlete, great dude, overall general, just a great, awesome dude.
Absolutely. No question about it. So let's get into it. So you're from Idaho, and you end up making your way to the University of Idaho to play football. Tell us about that. Let's start there. Obviously, the Idaho Vandals, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Good job.
And so you get to Idaho. When you got there, were you thinking, "Hey, look, NFL's in my future"? Was that even in the cards? I know for Brian, when I talked to him, it really wasn't when he first started. But talk to us about that.
I agree with Brian. Well, in my case, it really wasn't. And prior to Idaho, I actually went on to a junior college. I was a JUCO transfer. Coming out of high school, I didn't get a lot of recognition. You know, even though I was better than Jason Hansen's brother, Travis Hansen, I was better than him. I was the number 1 kicker in the league. He was the number 2 kicker in our Greater Spokane League. But he got a lot of recognition because of his name. You know, he's a bigger guy and kicked the ball pretty good. I still kicked the ball just as good, as far as high and straight and far and all that, than he did. But, because of his name and because, he was a smarter guy. I wasn't incredibly smart, but I could have gone into other colleges, but I wanted a scholarship. I figured I want to earn a scholarship. I don't want to make my parents pay for my school. I wanted something to shoot for, and the scholarship was the thing that I was really focusing on. And I got a scholarship at a junior college, which is peanuts, but I went and I played, and actually it was a nice transition because it was playing high school football, you see the skills and the abilities that you're playing against, and then in junior college it steps up a little bit, quite a bit, we'll say, as far as the speed and size. But then you go to from junior college to University of Idaho, and even that was kind of a challenge. And so kind of to answer your question really is the fact that when I finished my 2 years at Wenatchee Valley Community College, I was back in the same boat I was when I left high school. I'm looking for colleges to go to, and no one was biting. And I was a blue chip All-American my freshman year. My sophomore year, I wasn't as good, but I was still pretty good. And teams that maybe had an interest, those teams didn't have a scholarship available. They say, oh, you can walk on. And then I look at their kicking situation, and they've got like an All-American kicker. I'm like, no. Yep.
Right.
So,
right.
Idaho called John L. Smith from University of Idaho, gave me a call one day, and I was kind of surprised. And even him, with regards to the offer that they were offering me, wasn't a scholarship right out of the gate, but it was an opportunity to earn a scholarship for the semester I'd be entering anyway. So I didn't sign with the University of Idaho to come in on a scholarship. I signed to go to school there and earn a scholarship, obviously, to play football, and that's what I did. They actually had a transfer kicker from Michigan State that they thought was going to be their guy.
Oh, wow.
He didn't pan out, and I eventually beat him out for the actual scholarship as well. So that was my story getting into Idaho, and then from the NFL on, I kind of thought, I'm good. I compare myself now, maybe my senior year in college, maybe a little bit my junior year, but I started really comparing myself to current NFL kickers and seeing my stats, hang time on kickoffs and distance on kickoffs were just as good or better than a lot of the guys that were playing in the NFL at the time. So I thought, well, I clearly have an opportunity possibly, but I still got to get better. But we'll see what happens. And my mindset really ultimately is to be as good as I physically, with my body, my God-given abilities, whatever. I want to be as good as I physically can be, and whatever level that gets me, I have to be okay with. Because if I can get as good as I can be, then whatever level that is, that's great.
So you're comparing yourself, you're looking at stats, which is the nice part about kicking in a way where you can look at hang time and you can look at those measurements and say, well, I know I can do that. So then you graduate or you get done at Idaho and then you get a phone call. I believe it's from the Chargers. Is that fair to say? And they invited you into camp?
Well, I got some workouts. I went to the first call was actually the Atlanta Falcons right after the draft. I knew I wasn't going to get drafted. First, I'm a kicker. Plus, I'm from one double-A school, so I knew my draft ability was not even there. So I knew that after the draft is when I may get some attention or maybe some phone calls. Well, I got a phone call from John L. Smith, my head coach again at Idaho there, saying that the Atlanta Falcons wanted to fly me down there to Atlanta to work out. And so that is when I flew down to Atlanta, and it was me and four other guys. There's five guys there, Todd Peterson being one of them, and they kept after the workout. He did better than all of us. I felt I did good, but not as good as I could have, and not as good as Todd did. So they kept Todd for camp legs, to compete against Norm Johnson at the time. I came back to Idaho, obviously back to Washington State, and kind of hung out for a little bit. And then that a few days later, I got a call from John L. Smith again saying that the Chargers wanted to take a look at me. And so that's when I went down to San Diego and worked out for them. And they only had one other guy there to compete with me, and I was the better of the two, and they offered me a contract right then and there. It's a funny story because Bobby Beathard was the GM. I mean, how I thought I did, and I said, I did good. I could have done better. Clearly, I may have missed one or two or something, but obviously that's not 100%. So I told him that, and he said, well, we think you did good too, and we want to sign you. And I'm like, of course, I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's a problem. I'm like, oh my gosh, what? I mean, this is the best opportunity of my life, and I'm getting, signed to an NFL football team. It's got a problem. I wonder what it is. And he said, we don't have any money. And it didn't even faze me. I'm like, and what's your problem?
Yeah, right.
In fact, I didn't care about money, but what he was talking about was signing bonus. I'm like, when he explained that to me, I'm like, I wasn't expecting a signing bonus anyways. Like, no big deal at all. I'm going to be. And
Right. Give me a helmet and a jersey. Yeah.
Obviously, on the West Coast, we all knew the Chargers. We all knew Seattle. We all knew all those teams at West Coast, and it was an awesome opportunity, and I learned a lot at that camp.
That's incredible. And so now walk me to really what was the bulk of your career, which was Jacksonville. And, and I want to talk about, obviously how you got there and then your time there, and then any sort of, fun anecdotal stories. I know when I was talking to Brian Moorman, I had to ask him about the infamous play in the Pro Bowl where he got absolutely destroyed, and he had a really funny story about that, and maybe getting a Reebok scholarship, he said, because his feet were above his head and they could see the logo on the bottom. But so talk to me about your path to Jacksonville, and then what did you and specifically as you went to Jacksonville and you were playing and you were in high pressure situations and having great seasons. Love to know what you learned about yourself during that time that maybe is translated into after football time period, owning things and being an entrepreneur. So talk about Jacksonville if you could.
Well, my road to Jacksonville was another, challenge because, now getting done with college football, again, I'm back in kind of the same boat, the recruiting boat. Now, obviously it was a little bit more intense this time because it was the professional level. So I knew that, it's like, most guys are going to be in the same boat where they're really, really searching for exposure and trying to get opportunities to work out for teams. And that was me too. However, there was one thing that the Jaguars actually thought that was something that they did not want or didn't like about me was my size. They, I won't get into too many details with regards to how many times it worked out for the Jaguars. It was twice really, but we had to talk them into the first one. Like big time, talk them into it because it was kind of an unofficial workout because they had an interest, and actually, and to be honest with you, the Chargers wanted me to come back again. Well, John Carney had just gone to the Pro Bowl the year before, the year I was there in training camp, and so I'm like, well, but last year I was competing against John Carney, who was kind of a legend anyways, 4 or 5 years in the NFL.
Oh yeah,
everyone knew who John Carney was. Then he goes to the Pro Bowl, and you want me to come back again? Like, there's no way I'm going to beat John Carney out. It was a great opportunity, and I really, really appreciate it. Bobby Bethard called me and asked me about that, and I said, hey, man, I said the Jaguars had just reached out to me. I clearly know the opportunity there. Scott Sisson isn't John Carney. I know I love and respect Scott Sisson. He's a great dude. And so I knew that my opportunity was better, getting the job with Jaguars and the Chargers. So I told him, I said, well, give me a couple weeks. The Jaguars are looking at my film right now. They're going to give me an answer soon. And that time came and went. And, shortly after that, we kind of bounced around a couple things. Actually, I did get a workout during that time, but we had to talk them into that. So the next morning when I had said, because the Jaguars were dragging their feet, they thought I was too short. They said, well, we really like your video. Your workout was good, but Tom Coughlin just thinks you're too short. He wants a bigger guy. So we're going to go a different direction. And I was like, wow, that was kind of crazy. My agent was kind of laughing at the time, like, I've never heard of that before, but I'm like, well, what do we do now? And he basically closed the door on the Jaguars, thinking we're going to go somewhere else instead. Well, I have a kicking coach by the name of Jim Gaetano that is very stubborn. He does not like to hear the word no. He's worked for many, many NFL teams back in his prime. Got on with the Chiefs when he was 30 years old, finally, after 10 years of working out.
Wow.
9 years or so, whatever. But he called up. We worked out the same day, and I told Jim, I said, well, you wouldn't believe this. The Jaguars think I'm too short. So they want to, Ken, my agent, said, we're going to, close the door and move on. And Jim was furious. Like, in this back before payphones, of course. So he went to the nearest payphone after we got done working out, calls up the Jacksonville Jaguars and just let them have it. He just like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. And he had nothing to lose at that point because he's just my kicking coach.
Right.
But he said what was on his mind, and he does it anyways. So he has no filter.
Yeah.
So
it worked out. Yeah.
Exactly. He talked him into working me out. And so at that point, we went and had the workout. And then I think I might have got messed up a little bit of the time frame there, but I worked out for them after Jim told them, they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. But we had to meet the scout in the middle of Washington State. So we did that. I had a great workout. They still came back and said, well, we're not really sure, we're still thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. Then one Sunday evening, I was talking to my parents, and I'd had enough time to figure out what's going to happen. And I was like, I don't want to waste the opportunity with the Chargers. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to call the San Diego Chargers and tell them I'm signed because the Jaguars they're not answering the phone anymore. They're kind of giving us cold feet. And so that next morning, the phone call. I get the infamous phone call from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They called me up the next morning before I had a chance to call the Chargers.
Wow.
Papa wants to see you in person. We want to fly you to Jacksonville, work you out in person in Jacksonville. I'm like, oh my gosh, awesome. Okay, great. So that week, they put me down. I was the only guy they brought in, so that was like, okay, this is good. They must have exhausted all their opportunities of other guys that were bigger than me, but.
Right.
I took advantage of proving them wrong, and Tom was out there watching the whole workout, and I had one of the player personnel guys, Rick Ripprish, holding the ball for me. And it wasn't even a player. I didn't have no snap or hold, but he was doing kind of simulated snap and hold. And clearly, you know where I'm going with this. He wasn't the greatest holder, but, I missed a couple kicks, whatever, but it wasn't, they were not great holds. But I didn't say a word, just kept my mouth shut. And
Yeah. I used to hold, so I know the feeling. Yeah.
And they liked me. And they're like, we like you. And we're gonna give you $5,000. I'm like, what? Like a signing bonus of $5,000? So that was that point there where my life had changed. I actually, I signed with the Jaguars and got the team, and then went through training camp and eventually made the team. I beat out Scott Sisson. We went through all 5 preseason games. It was that close of a battle, and Scott unfortunately missed an extra point in the last preseason game, which I think was kind of the solidifier there. So they kept me. And, I played there, the first year. I was 20, 27 on field goal, so it wasn't great, rookie and so forth. But I learned a lot because it was a new franchise. And I
remember. Yeah.
And when part of the things that I learned looking back now that I probably should not have said, I had a reporter ask me about, why do you compare this to the Chargers and this and that? And I was like, well, the Chargers, they talk about all the history of the Chargers, and it's the team that's already established and that. And then I gave some negative things towards the Jaguars. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I say that? Like, things, stuff that I'd say, well, the parking lot's not even, concrete yet, so trailers for offices and that. I kind of like shunned the Jaguars, even though I should have been lifting them up and being thankful for the opportunity.
Right.
And it's just being young and dumb. So I learned a lot, was
it Mark Brunell? He was the quarterback, I think, right?
Steve Bernline was supposed to be our quarterback, and he was.
Okay.
After the first game, I think he got hurt in the first game, and so Mark came in the second game, I think, and that was really the end of Steve Bernline because Mark did really well, and from that point on, we kept Mark. Yeah.
So it's interesting because had you made that call to the Chargers, this could have potentially turned out way different. No, I mean, it's possible. I assume if you're under contract with them and then now you're somewhat beholden to them and had Jacksonville called you, would you have been able to even get out of that and go or no?
No. I would have to have signed the contract before. If I'd signed a contract, I couldn't get out of it. I'd have to request them to release me. I'm not sure if they would have done it or not. Maybe they would have because just a very good organization. Bobby Beathard is awesome. But that would have been a sticky situation.
Look, I think I'm biased. You're probably equally as biased on this one. I think a field goal kicker, more than any position in any sport, is the most pressure-packed position that there is. Now, I say that to my buddies who all played something, they whatever. But I think it's true. I liken it to if you're a golfer and you need to hit that great shot on 18, it's really – you want to do it for you and your caddy, but it's really up to you. And there's, if you miss it, it's on you and it's just you that's impacted, generally speaking. When you think about, even a basketball player has to hit a free throw at the end. They've got teammates and it's all, but there's nothing like having to line up. And you know this better than anybody, with the elements, with something on the line where you've got a 53-man roster, you could be kicking for a Super Bowl. The pressure's immense. How did you deal with that? I know you were in situations where you had to make a critical kick, obviously, but did that get better over the course of your career? Did you learn how to measure yourself as you moved forward in your career? Talk about the pressure, if you would.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I'm glad you asked me that way because it does. My answer is yes. I got better as time went through. Obviously, NFL in general is a very high pressure, position, regardless of what position you're playing on the football field. The kicker happens to be probably the most stressful position, clearly. But the way I treat it really is, and it kind of has a lot to do with my kicking technique. Okay, because the thing that most kickers do is they athletically steer a football, and they get good at athletically steering a football. But really rely on their athletic ability to make kicks, but more so the mental side of it. They and it's very typical for any kicker, to be honest with you. They would try to change things a little bit, not purposely changing things, but just kind of putting more emphasis on a more important type of outcome kick. Okay, so in other words, they treat a game-winning kick differently than they would kick a normal field goal they would kick in the middle of the game or the first kick of the game. I would say the middle, because first kicks can be a little stressful. Because it's the first kick of the game. You don't know how it's going to go from that point on. But, if you're kicking well and you're having a good game and you kick a field goal, you don't think twice about it. You're just kicking a field goal. You're just doing your job. Well, when it comes down to the game-winning kick, things change in your mind. Like, now you have to make it. Well, you had to make the one before, too, but you really didn't put that much pressure on yourself to do that. You just kicked it, right? Yep. So that's the thing. It's like they treat them differently. They treat them more importantly. And that my biggest answer to that question when most people ask me that, not as good as you did, though, but most people ask that same question, and I say the biggest thing is, why would you treat a game-winning kick any different than any other kick in a game? There's no reason to, because the mechanics are exactly the same. Everybody's doing the same job, everything. There's nothing different other than the outcome of ultimately now the game. But there shouldn't be. So if you've done something a million times in a row in practice and you've made kicks, you've done really good, you've gotten good at whatever it is you're doing, then it comes time to really, when it matters, why would you change up what you've been successful at? It's like recreating the wheel. No one's going to do that, right? So why would you do that? But that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to just say you don't care, which is another thing I tell people too. Is like, how do you deal with all the pressure? I said, well, really, my honest answer? Like, yeah. Well, I don't care where the ball goes. What? You don't care where the ball goes? You have to care where the ball goes. That I don't. I can't care where the ball goes, because if I do, I'm going to do something different. I can't care about the outcome, because if I do, I'm going to do something different. So I just dumb it down. I simplify the process, and I just repeat. It's as simple as that. Repeat.
What's so interesting about that, Mike, is that when you think about, even translating this to business, I spent the first decade of my career on the sales side. And when you, as a salesperson, started to press, like if you did the same thing all the time and you called customers and had the same line and you did whatever and you just were in a groove, when you started to show that you were pressing for whatever reason, you had a goal to meet, you had this, automatically things turn out differently, and usually not for the better. And I think it's very similar to what you just described, which is if you just focus on the fundamental parts of it, you don't know what the customer is going to say. You have no idea. But if you look desperate, they'll sense that you're desperate, and they're probably likely to say, you know what, I'm all set. Thank you very much. So as you were saying that, in my head, I'm thinking, for people that listen to this podcast for any sort of business insights and things, that to me is the parallel back to what you just described.
I agree with you 100%. And fast forward into the things I'm doing now, entrepreneur stuff. I feel like, early on with my kicking academy, I tried really hard to get business. And after a while, I thought, why am I trying so hard? It shouldn't be that difficult. The people will come, and it starts to get, the branding was good and people started listening. And then even in the entrepreneurial stuff I'm doing now in the direct sales industry, my biggest mistake, until this business taught me otherwise, my biggest mistake was doing exactly what you said. I was trying too hard to make a sale. And I don't even like to even use the word sales or sale or sell or anything. I don't sell you anything. I want to give you information on something I think is important, and it's up to you whether you decide to move forward with me or not. And that's right. Yeah, that's my intention now.
So I do want to jump in. I do want to get into that. I do have to ask you real quick for our Buffalo fans. So you spent a year in Buffalo. What was your take on Buffalo? I'm actually doing this from Buffalo. But tell me about your year in Buffalo. Was it memorable? If it was it for the Wings or was it for the football? Because I know that was a dark time in the Bills' history. So I'm curious.
It was an interesting time, of course, with Drew Bledsoe there, and it was just kind of a lot of attention to the Bills and a lot of excitement. The Bills fans are excitement anyways. Even playing against them are crazy. Now I'm part of the Bills Mafia, so I was on the
that's right.
And then you hear that fan say, "Oh, hey, you're the guy that beat us and put us out of the playoffs in '96," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm on your team now." That's great. But it was fun. It was it was a little stressful in the sense where it was always cold, windy, and all that. Towards the
in Buffalo it was cold and windy.
Yeah,
really?
that right. But that
Oh boy.
everyday stuff, Greg Williams was their head coach, but super good guy,
Oh yeah.
little intense, as you know, but
Hmm.
good dude. Even if I saw him today, he'd be happy to see me. He's just one of those guys. Danny Smith, my special teams coach. Oh my gosh, talk about laughing and rolling. Just a great guy. Brian Mormon, all
Yep.
those guys. So we had some great guys on the team. Um, and they were going through a little bit of a transition as far as trying to, build the Buffalo Bills back to where they used to be and so forth. But I think just overall in general, it was tough because I was only on a 1 year deal, and it was a
Right.
little tough, coming from as good as I was doing in Jacksonville, and the only team to offer me a contract after I, ran out my 4 year contract with the Jaguars. The only team to offer me a contract was the Bills, and I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. I went to I'm a Pro Bowl kicker, and then of course they only offered me a 1 year deal, and so when the time came after my first year with Buffalo, they did give me an offer, another, a 4 year deal because they liked me and they figured that. And when during the middle of negotiations about that deal, my coach Jim Gaetano, actually he became my agent at the time. So not only was my kicking coach, he was also my agent because he actually did a lot as an agent would for a player that they're trying to get in the NFL or whatever. So Jim was talking to Tom Donahoe and comparing me to other guys like Jason Hanson and Jason Elam and a couple of other guys. And Tom stopped in the mid sentence and said, "Jim, you're comparing Mike Hollis to a Pro Bowl kicker, to Pro Bowl kickers." And Jim says, "Tom, Mike is a Pro Bowl kicker." And he said, "When did Mike Hollis go to the Pro Bowl?" I was like, this is the general manager of a professional football team,
Unbelievable.
NFL, one of 32 teams in the highest level of football in the world, and you're the one responsible for knowing everything about your players, and you didn't know the kicker you had on a roster for an entire year had not gone to the Pro Bowl. And so
That is unbelievable.
I know it was very strange, but you know what? It is what it is, and they went with Ryan Lindell after that for whatever reason. But no, I don't say that in a negative way. Ryan's a great dude, great guy, great kicker, had a great career, awesome guy. And they just chose to go with him instead, which is okay. It's the nature of the business. I eventually signed a 5 year deal with the New York Giants, so it kind of all worked out. Although I did get hurt and didn't really play with the Giants, so that's my story.
Well, that's so. Let's as we wrap up the football side of things. Then fast forward. I think what was it, 2022 or 2023, whatever it was. That's why when I made a LinkedIn post, I said, you retired, and I said, kind of. You then appear with the Jacksonville Sharks at the age of, I don't want to date you, obviously, but 50, I think. Were you 50? And you were so. Talk to us about that before we jump into the business side of stuff.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I know one of the owners of the Sharks, and the year prior to that, I had reached out to him, the owner, and said, "Hey, I want to get my kicker because I'm obviously coaching kickers. I play in arena too, and I want to get a kicker in there to kick around and see what he can do, and then I'll bring my shoes too and play around too, because I still kick and I still enjoy it, right?" Well,
Sure.
he said,
Yeah.
"Okay, yeah, well, I'll see what we can do," and something happened, the ball was dropped, and we never got in there. Well, fast forward like 6 months later, that same guy, Nick Fierce, the owner of the Sharks, one of them, he called me up and said, "Hey, were you serious about that text you sent me last year, or a while back?" I said, "Yeah, definitely. My guy's still ready. He's ready to go. I want you to take a look at him and get in the arena league." And he said, "No, not about him. He says about you, like playing around kicking. Like, can you still kick?" I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, I haven't like kicked in a game, but I mean, if I get 10 balls to kick, I can kick them, or 20 or 50, whatever." And he said, "Well, what about you playing?" And I said, "You're joking, right?" He said, "No, I want you. You play." And I said, "Well, I don't. Let me give it some thought. Let me start training and see if my biggest thing, and it wasn't my back at the time. My biggest thing was just, am I in kicking shape?" And so
Right.
I trained and got back into the kicking mode, and every single day in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Your hamstrings are yelling the same thing to you as well. Yeah.
And speaking of, I did pull a hamstring or two when the time
Oh no.
sprints and stuff like that, training, of course. And it was about a month or so, and I'm like, "Oh man, I pulled my hamstring kind of hurts a little bit, whatever. I'll get over it. It's just pain. It'll go away." So I just kept training, and sure enough, I go into what I considered training camp, and ironically, I was the kicker they had on the roster, which he said they weren't sure if they're bringing back, but he came back, which is fine, great. It was Brandon Bear, and he was the kicker I used to work with. He was a client of Proform Kicking.
Oh my.
Here I am at 50 years old. I just turned 50 a month before that, and I'm competing against a guy that I used to train, really strange.
That's
But
great.
it was fun. It was, and he was kicking better than me, and I knew he had a stronger leg than me. I mean, he's younger. He's a really good athlete. He kicked the ball really well, and he beat me out, which I was totally fine with. I'm like, when Ty Burley told me, we're gonna stick with our kicker, and I'm like, when he said that to me, I was kind of like a relief, like, okay, good. Maybe this is a sign that I really shouldn't be doing that.
Well, it's also a good ad for your kicking academy. Hey, you got somebody,
I think they want a little publicity too, which is fine. No big deal.
Right.
So it's fine. So fast forward a few months, they got rid of Brandon for whatever reason, wasn't kicking well, I guess, but they signed another guy. So another sign. I'm like, okay, well, if they picked up somebody else and they clearly don't really, okay, that's another reason why I shouldn't be playing. Well, fast forward another few weeks from that point, Nick Fierce calls me back and says, hey man, our guy, he's not kicking really well. He's kind of injured, but you think you can sneak in a game or two or maybe longer? Or are you still kicking? I'm like, oh my gosh, you're coming after me again. So I said, yes, Nick, I'll give it a shot. So literally I had a week to prepare basically and got on and played the one game. My intention wasn't just to play one game. My intention was to see what I can do, keep playing, whatever.
Sure.
But my body, my back, every inch of my body was so sore after that game.
Father time is undefeated, as they say. Yep.
Gave it a couple of days of rest, called up Coach Burley and said, Coach, I hate to do this to you, but hopefully your guy, is healthy again, but my body can't do this. I can't. And I literally told him I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Well,
it was a great experience.
It's funny. At least you went out giving it another try. I was out helping a buddy of mine put up a pergola in his backyard about 3 weeks ago, and they said, hey, do you want to punt some to us? I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, that wasn't a great idea because the next 3 days I could barely feel my hamstring from barely getting my leg up. And so I give you a lot of credit. You're further ahead than I was. But so let's talk about, we talked about the Kicking Academy and what you're doing down there, and we'll link to it all in the show notes. And I do want to jump into what you're also doing with 3 and hearing about that, and obviously what it is and how people can get involved, but also we talked about it a little bit, but your playing career and how that's helped you both in terms of what you're doing today, entrepreneurship, things that you've learned over time that you could share with folks as they sit there thinking about, hey, I want to do something on my own, or I want to get involved in something that's different from, let's say, corporate America per se. Talk about 3 if you will, and then we'll get into that.
Okay. Yeah. A great way of asking that question too, because the thing is when I compare what I did as a kicker, because that was kind of a job, I'll say. It's a fun job.
Yeah.
As a kicker, the Jim Gaetano, my coach, he taught me a system. He taught me the mechanics of a good kick and what works and what doesn't. He taught me the best way of kicking the football. And clearly I'm very prideful of that because I did it at 5'7", 5'8" on a good day. 180 pounds, as a very average athlete, I was better than a lot of the NFL guys at the time. Not anymore. These guys are incredibly good now, but
they're
the point
crazy.
really is that the system that my coach taught me, I had to trust and use, and I did, and I'm glad I did. At first, I was a little hesitant, but after I learned it and got a little bit more detail with it, I trusted it and I used it. Okay. Well, fast forward and getting into the concept of the first few direct sales companies I've been with prior to this one, I didn't follow. I didn't even know the system existed. I didn't know there was any part of the system. I just kind of felt like I had to do it on my own, which is another thing that that I always bring up to the people in this company that when I give my testimony, essentially, is I say that I didn't have any help, but that's okay because I'm a former NFL player. I'm a dude. I'm stubborn. I think I got this on my own anyways. It didn't work. I needed to follow a certain successful system, and in this company, I've learned a good system that teaches me how to approach people about this. And again, it's not salesy. I don't ever want to sell anything to anybody. I want to provide information on an opportunity that you could become healthier and wealthier if you just follow the system. And that's as easy as it is. And that's been very successful for me because I use third-party validation for things. The system gives us access to all kinds of material that we can use to share with people. But the best thing about it is I'm not doing all the work on my own. And that's really where this company 3 and the team that I'm on has developed kind of a system where we're kind of spiking some interest. And again, we're a one-of-a-kind company that gets involved in the cellular absorption delivery technologies, which is very new. If you think about, and I'm getting technical now, but in the past 32 years now, I guess it's been around. liposomal delivery technology, which people have kind of started to hear about in the last couple of years. The reason they're starting to hear about it is because the government had a patent on that technology, and they used it for patients that were receiving cancer treatments. And so what the technology would do is would to help that whatever treatment they were giving that patient to better absorb in the body, and that's where the liposomal technology was used. Well, that patent expired a couple of years ago, and now companies can use it. And so and I see it on Facebook a lot where these companies are bragging about their one cellular absorption delivery technology, liposomal. And I'm like, well, I kind of laugh because we have 11. We have 11 technologies that we use, not just one. And 9 of the 11 that we use are exclusive to our company. And so you take high quality, very, very clean, plant-based, nutritional supplemental products, and you add the best in the world because we grow our plants our own. We do it from seed to sale. We use very good quality material in our products, and then you add the cellular absorption technology to all that, and you're getting the best of both worlds. And so people think of supplements and vitamins as, it's just one of those things. You're just gonna, most companies, what they do when they sell, and it could be direct sales companies too, they white label. So what they do is they hire a manufacturer that's already got something already kind of made, and then they sprinkle some what they call some proprietary dust on it, call it their own, put their company logo on it, and then try to resell it as a new, vitamin. Well, there's so many vitamin companies out there that have done them, and a lot of them are actually synthetically made too, by the way. That's another fact, which you wouldn't know. Unless you kind of, did some research and kind of figured it out. But that's the thing is like there's a lot of companies that are doing all that. And so that gets a stigma for, the nutritional supplement industry. Like, I tried those things. They don't work on me. Well, probably because they weren't absorbed. And that's it's getting kind of a little TMI, but if you've ever gone to the bathroom after taking a pretty strong, vitamin, what you thought was strong, and looked at the color of the toilet water, how bright yellow it is, you're like, wow, that was a strong vitamin. No, it was not. It's very weak. You're looking at it down there in that toilet. That's it, right there. It's for your body.
Right.
So ours doesn't.
Yeah, went right through it.
Ours doesn't do that. And the best part about this whole thing is the fact that we're getting a lot of great testimonies. People are coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh my gosh, you would not believe I'm a diabetic, but my numbers are coming back amazingly." People are experiencing things they weren't even expecting to experience. We have 6 different products that we take, and if you take all 6 of them, and then I'll get a little more technical, the epigenetics part, but we have only 6 products. We don't have like 100 products. We just have 6. And those 6 are really responsible for homeostasis, which is a fancy way of saying our natural well-being, the way our bodies are supposed to be on a daily basis. And so, you think of the word epigenetics, it has a lot to do with your genes and how they upregulate or downregulate. Good genes, the genes need to be upregulated, should be upregulated. The genes need to be downregulated, should be downregulated. We've done a study on our products showing that our products actually do exactly what I just said. They upregulate the genes that need to be upregulated or turned on, and they turn off or downregulate genes, inflammatory genes, that need to be turned down or turned off. And so that's another reason why, in my opinion, of course, that a lot of people are feeling a lot of good things with these products because of the fact that the epigenetics is kicking in, getting us in general back into homeostasis. We actually have a detox pill as well. There's a lot of toxins that we're taking on a daily basis that's not good. And so we need things that will keep us healthy. And our company has products that are doing that.
So do people then, that's a good explanation. That makes a lot of sense. Do people have to be taking anything from a vitamin through any sort of therapy or therapeutic drug or something like that? That's what, so if I'm taking nothing, would this still be of benefit, or is it preferred that, if you're taking at the very least a vitamin, this will help absorb everything that you're taking in that vitamin all the way up through, hey, I'm in cancer treatment, I'm taking something, this will help that too?
Well, these are actually, the technologies I'm referring to are actually embedded, or they're within all of our products. So it's not the technology you're taking the products with the technology. And so, yes, to your question, you're like, I don't take vitamins I eat good, healthy food. If you do some research on American produce, if you eat vegetables and fruits every single day, find out where they were grown, find out how many pesticides and things, the chemicals and things that were put on them, then find out what the nutrient dense, how dense the soil is as far as nutrients and minerals. Then tell me if you're actually getting some good nutrients. And I'm here to tell you that I promise you're you're not getting what you think you are. They did a study not too long ago that was revealed that you would take you 18 apples today that are grown today to get the nutritional value of one apple grown in 1980. That's a fact, okay? These are factual things that I'm saying, like things that your produce, your foods, and don't even get started on the processed foods, because we all know those are all just money grabbers and just let's get people addicted to sugars and just high processed foods, and so that's all they'll eat. And so we'll make all kinds of money. Our health is terrible. We are the most obese country in the world, and that's a fact too. Why? Why, of all technologies that Americans have, why are we the most diseased and obese country in the world? Why? Why is that? Because there's a lot of, and I won't get into it, but a lot of money hungry people and corporations don't care about our health. They want money. But my point is that obviously that our products are working for people. And again, the best part about it is the fact that you can actually refer these to other people, because when you go to a movie and you see a great movie, do you keep your mouth shut to your friends about the great movie you just saw, or do you just throw up on, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe this movie is great? You're going to go tell them about the movie, right? Well, the theater's not going to pay you for that. The production company's not going to pay you for that. The actors aren't going to pay you for that. No one's going to pay you for that. You just gave free publicity to a movie that you really like. Why do you do that here with the products? I love the products. I've taken all 6 products since March 30th of last year, and I've not missed a day, and I feel amazing. I really wish I could say that 3 was the reason I played, football in the Arena League at the age of 50, but that was prior to 3's existence. So I can't say that, but I do feel even better than I did, 2 years ago. I'm 52 now, but I do. I feel great. I feel wonderful. I feel homeostasis. Yeah.
Well, it's really great to hear, because I'll be 48 this year, and my goal is by the time I'm 50 to be the healthiest I've ever been. I feel like right now, honestly, I'm probably the healthiest in shape I've ever been. And that's without taking anything just yet. So maybe I'll have to hit you. Up. But yeah. So Mike, as we wrap up, if you were to encapsulate your playing career, your kicking academy, what you're doing with 3, and think about the piece of advice, the biggest thing that you've learned over time. I know you hit a little bit on it, having a process and technique and things like that, and how that's translated. But is there something that you would say overarching all that when you wake up each day, when you're taking on a new endeavor, what is it that you're telling yourself in order for you to be successful in that, based on what you've learned over the last 50 years?
Well, you kind of have to figure out, in other words, with regards to like the process of certain things, anything you're doing on a daily basis in life, I want to make it simple as possible. That's the way I was with the kicker. As a kicker, I want to simplify the motion, because if you simplify a bunch of complex motions or movements, and I don't even say complex, if you just simplify a bunch of motions and movements and put them together, they're easier to repeat. If you do things that are easier to repeat, you'll be more consistent in what you're doing. And so that translates into really everyday life, is really dumb it down, simplify the process, work smarter, not harder, value your time is another thing I really like to learned over time. I've always been kind of a yes man, and not to say that it hasn't panned out for me, but with regards to just, always doing things for people, I honestly, and this is God's honest truth, because I believe I was put on this earth to help people, because that's all I really am. I help myself too, but I really get more enjoyment and satisfaction out of helping others than myself. But I ultimately have to help myself. But with regards to just everyday life, it's just a matter of just simplifying the process and finding the ways that work and sticking with them, and don't deviate from things that are successful. The system I'm referring to, the company, it's a system that took me a little while to kind of understand and really feel confident with. I didn't like it at first, but I do like it now. It's very effective, because again, I always thought I had to do it myself, but this is a system that teaches me that I don't. Get involved with a company or products or things that you feel confident with. With regards to 3, bringing that up again, I feel confident with 3, and I didn't even mention this yet as well, but I will now, because it adds a ton of credibility to the company, is that all 6 of our products are listed in the PDR, which is the Physician's Desk Reference Guide. And any doctor in the world knows exactly what that book is. It's a guide for all these medications, starting in the pharmaceutical industry, but we're one of 20 only we're one of only 22 nutraceutical companies in that guide. And if you're a company and you have products in that guide, you have instant credibility with doctors worldwide. We have over 900 doctors part of our company because of that.
Right.
Okay. So again, going back to your question, sorry to deviate on that, but just with regards to just, everyday life, simplify the process, have fun. That's a big deal. It's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. If you're not having fun on a daily basis, you're doing something wrong. You got to have fun.
I love the advice, because I think the pandemic brought out a lot of people's questioning what they were doing and if they were having fun with what they were doing. And, you can count me as one of those, and went out on my own and never enjoyed work more than I do now, because it's really up to me and what I do and the folks that do work for me to be successful. I love your keeping it simple part, because I think that's so true. And I always look to try to simplify, but maybe I need to look for ways to simplify it even more, because I do believe that is such a critical thing. And I see that today if I work with clients, sometimes they just give me like the basic stuff. And sometimes you can overcomplicate. Well, Mike, I appreciate your time so much today. It was really great to reconnect, and glad you were able to see this T-shirt that's been hanging out for 30 years. And it still fits, by the way. That's always the testament. Am I staying in good enough shape where this still fits from 30 years ago? It does. But I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us. And also the Buffalo Bills helmet in the back was a nice, strategically placed homage to a big listening group. So
see, there was a reason I did that. I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, I'll put that.
I know, it's smart. Very, very smart. I picked up on as soon as you beamed in on the video. I'm like, oh, look at that. That's pretty good. Well, thanks again, Mike, for your time. Really look forward to it. We'll link to everything in the show notes. And thanks again for joining us.
Okay, Ryan. Thank you, bud.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Leopard Spots podcast. If you liked what you heard, then be sure to like, subscribe, leave a rating, and visit our website at fractional.co. As a founder, a senior leader at Fortune 500 companies, and executive at high-growth fintechs, Ryan loves to talk business and share these stories with you. That's all for now, folks. Catch you next time on the Leopard Spots podcast.